Hello learners, I am Dr. Sunita Dhal, faculty with the School of Gender and Development Studies, IGNOU. I am also the program coordinator for the Certificate in Gender and Science program along with Professor Savita Singh. She is another coordinator of this program. Today we have two sessions from 4 to 4:30 and then after that. So in these two sessions we are going to discuss about the program, that is Certificate Program in Gender and Science. In the first session, we are going to discuss about the overview of the program of Gender and Science. Along with, we are going to reflect upon some of the key points of the first course, that is BGS 002, Gender, Science, Technology and Society. In the second half of this program, we are going to reflect upon the other two courses of this particular program, that is Certificate Program in Gender and Science. What are these two courses? That would be BGS 003 and BGS 004. And these two courses, BGS 003, which is Sociopolitical Dimensions of Gender and Science, will focus briefly on the debates, both international and Indian debates, and with different kind of policies, what has been transpired or what has been implemented in the arena of gender and science, particularly in the discourse of women in science. And the last course, that is BGS 004, which is Gender Perspectives on Health. This particular course is going to focus on the gender dimensions, how to look at health and well-being from the perspective of gender. So with this, I welcome all my learners who have registered for this program, that is Certificate Program in Gender and Science, and we are going to look at the background, why this program and how this program was conceptualized in Women in Science, and secondly, what are the central theme behind or the learning outcomes, like what is expected learning outcomes of this particular program, and why our learners have should also join, like this is also reflect upon the prospective learners, why different learners are going to join this program, and what would be the benefit of having this academic program in terms of its outreach as well as course completion. With this, the background of the program, now we are talking about even National Educational Policy, NEP 2020 in India, where larger focus is also there on STEM education. So when we are talking about bringing about innovation or growth in science and technology, how do we leave women or girls at the periphery? And therefore, when we are talking about when NEP is focusing on STEM education, this is clearly reflects on gender inclusivity, how to increase women or girls' enrollment or women's participation in science education, research and career. So with this, the current debate, we can also look at, historically what has happened and why the School of Gender and Development Studies at IGNOU thought of launching a program that is in gender and science. So when we are looking at, the conceptually, and it is very much there in the self-learning materials, what are the theoretical debates historically which looked into science as an institution as patriarchal, and how modern science is based on a positivistic framework, and by making objectivity as the assessment criteria, it slowly and gradually excluded other forms of knowledge. So when we are talking about other forms of knowledge, here we are also talking about the local knowledge system or the women's knowledge system or the feminine knowledge system, when we are talking about natural resource management development, or in the context of agriculture, health and healing practices, and also in let's say in millet farming, in seed saving, so on and so forth. So feminists in a way have, or feminist scholars have offered another view of science, which is theorized at standpoint theory. And I would request my learners, you go back to the first block of this particular unit and where particular course, that is BGS 002, and there theoretical debates have been put in place in this blog, where scholars like Sandra Harding, Dorothy Smith, Donna Haraway have looked into the whole question of how science can be viewed alternatively, and how feminist science studies can actually contribute towards expanding the scientific knowledge, or producing a knowledge which will be more equitable, through which we can bring about social transformation at the grassroots. In recent years also, women's access to STEM education has been debated in international platforms. So when we are talking about STEM education, that is science, technology, engineering, mathematics and medicine. And in India, feminist science studies have come up with research data to improve women's participation in science. More and more, if you really look at, women's question in IT sector, or women's enrollment in science disciplines, it is gradually increasing, and India is doing far more better compared to other parts of the world, even the developed parts of the world. So with this, why we need to talk about science, gender in the context of science, that when we are talking about any innovation, there is absolutely no gender difference in terms of educating girls in science, or how to facilitate women scientists and technologists in terms of participating in research, in science career and science research. And what does this program offer to our learners? So why do you need to, do this program? Because this program provides a unique opportunity to research scholars, scientists, policymakers, development professionals, even the grassroots workers who are working at the block level, at the, in different civil society organizations, they can critically engage with interdisciplinary field. The program has been designed to provide a holistic understanding of gender in science by covering basic concepts of gender, science, technology and society interface. So when we are talking about science technology, it is very much part of our society, and therefore when we are talking about society, gender is a critical component within the society, and there is a dynamic interplay between gender, science, technology and society here. The core aim of this program is to understand the culture, process and practice of doing science from a gender lens. So when we are talking about science as an institution, it has its embedded structure in place, and those embedded structures are androcentric in nature, where there is a sense of male-centric approach when we are talking about scientific institutions, in terms of decision making, in terms of representation of women in scientific institutions, or at what position many women are there, or how many girls are there in science disciplines or science streams or engineering and technology field, so on and so forth. So here it is, so therefore we have to enable the structure and to be able to participate in doing science, in practicing science, and to retain more girls and women in science and other allied disciplines as well. What are the learning outcomes? What, after doing this program, after doing, the 3 courses of this program, what is expected from our learners? So the learning outcomes are to impart theoretical concepts on gender science interface, like we have to see science as a complex institution, so also gender is a complex phenomena, and therefore how even scholars gender studies scholars have offered a critical lens to the study of science or to the practice of doing science. Those theoretical concepts, it's very important to understand. Apart from that, there are concepts like what is gender, what is the difference between sex and gender roles, gender dynamics, gender relationship, gender power relations, gender disaggregated data, gender analysis. So these questions are also, these concepts have been explained in this particular course. And second is to enrich capacity of learners with regard to policies, programs and schemes to retain girls and women in science, to enable learners to critically engage with feminist science in areas of STEM, ecology, health, local knowledge systems, climate change and renewable energy technology. So where, like for example, when we are talking about local knowledge system in health and healing, or in agriculture, where we are talking about, you may be aware of seed saving techniques which have been practiced by many Adivasi and peasant communities of India. So here who are the bearers of knowledge? Primarily, if you really go to the village or in the forest areas, you could see the large number of women are participating. They are the knowledge bearers in terms of collecting, saving seeds of various indigenous crop varieties in India. And therefore, when it is science in that sense is part of the society, and therefore it is very important that how do we critically look at the science which can actually bring about social transformation at the grassroots level. And to gain basic understanding about the complex interplay between gender, science, technology and society, which I explained in my previous example, help to contextualize the discourse of science from an intersectional perspective. So here, when we are talking about intersectionality in science, certainly gender is a perspective. Along with that, we are also going to look at the question of caste, question of class, question of race, sexuality, in the context of science. So which group have been represented fairly in terms of pursuing science studies or science career not only in India but also in the international context, and investigate the relevance of gender concepts in order to demystify scientific rationality. So we are going to, I'll give in my succeeding slides, I'll take up few of these questions, that how do we need to demystify science. For example, the basic example I can give it to my learner is that when we are, when many of you may be aware of collecting data. So remember when we were, doing the, are in the field collecting, a data for a survey. So here the question, let's say household survey. So the whole question is that household, when we are doing a household survey, that we assume that a man is the head of the household. It's a kind of an assumption that we take. Or if you look at some of the advertisements also, you could see that who are there in the technology, in the technical sector. So it is highly, that you could see that the male images are being posed in relation to a high-tech technology. So these are some of the, some of the simple examples we can draw from our daily life. And you could see that even in the newspaper clippings or in some of the reports, you could see that how, in a way, gender is being taken in a neutral sense when we are talking about science. So we believe that science is gender neutral, but here the whole question, what the program will critically engage with, that science is not, there is no neutrality, gender neutrality in the institution of science, but there is a kind of gender bias that exists in the structure of scientific institutions, as well as the process of constructing a scientific knowledge. So, but certainly in India there is a change, and also this change is also there world over. and investigate. So this is the example. So here we can go into that how the three courses are being placed. So the first course, as I explained to you earlier, it is Gender, Science, Technology and Society. Second is Sociopolitical Dimensions of Gender in Science. And third course is Gendered Perspectives on Health. So let's look at some of the key themes of the first course in this session. So this particular course has total of 4 blocks, that is like 4 segments, 5 blocks and 5 segments, and within each block there are 3 units. So the first unit is gender science, gender society, gender science, gender technology, and second block is talking about historical perspective, positivism, evolutionism, social Darwinism, and women in modern science. And the third block is talking about health, well-being, farming, food production, environment, climate change, and energy. So what are these key points? Because we can actually revisit some of the central theme of this particular course, that how notions of femininity and masculinity shape gender roles, that as I given an example, like, assuming household would be headed by the male, right? So it is a kind of a understanding that how gender roles are in place in the society, like in every culture. So there is a clear division of labor that is there within the family and the household. Like seen, women are more participating in the reproductive role, like taking care of the house, nurturing role, taking care of the children, elderly, cooking food. So the reproductive role, where vis-a-vis the men, where majorly they are into the public sector in terms of being earning or associating them with public sector, with technology, and then also certainly with market decision making and taking leadership. So that this is a kind of a gender role that you could see here. And the gender power relations persist across caste, class, ethnicity, and other institutions. So that is the kind of a gender power relations. So now there is a change in within the household in India also. So it's a positive trend, but at the same time, can we think of restructuring or doing a role reversal within the household, like men taking care of the reproductive labor and women are taking care of entirely of the productive labor? So how do we define here? Labor means work. So can we see a complete role reversal? Or many scholars have in their concepts spoke about the restructuring of the household work or household labor. Does it happen? No, it doesn't happen. So, these roles are being divided, and the same manifestation or reflection also we see when we go to the public sector or public life, in terms of like who are there in pursuing core science like physics, earth sciences, mathematics, majorly men, right? Vis-a-vis who are into other sciences or into social sciences or humanities, it is the women. So how these roles are also been clustered in various disciplines or across different streams. Knowledge production is also not gender neutral. As I explained to you earlier, that there is no gender neutrality when we are talking about science or the practice of science or doing science. It is gendered in nature. Therefore, we can, this in this course, that more of argument which looked into how the practice, culture and structure of science is gendered in nature, or there is an androcentric view of scientific knowledge production process. Other key points include how scientists and feminists have engaged with the question of gender, and technology became the agency through which gender stereotypes, attitudes have been expressed. There are multiple paradigms and worldviews within which science develops. And, we were talking about the positivist paradigm. Positivist paradigm has started with Enlightenment era, that is the 17th century Europe. So there is a clear-cut division that has been guided the development of knowledge was region, objectivity and criticality. And the difference between science, common sense knowledge, or what in literature, in feminist literature, the Cartesian dualism has the difference between the body and mind, public and private, productive and reproductive role, nature and culture have begun to emerge in the discourse of institutions and universities. Like Londa Schinberg states that in the history of science, the understanding of human evolution was all about the evolution of man. So this is an example. The classic example is that when we talk about evolution of society, it is all about the writings reflect the evolution of man. And it is understood that women are part here in the whole concept or notion of man. And the last two blocks, that is block 4 and 5, discusses women, science, technology, workplace, feminism and science. So what are the key points here it focuses? The gender-digital divide in the sphere of technology, which impacted the digital divides across demographies and region. There is a gender gap in access to STEM education and career, and that has been a reality. So when we are talking about there is a gender gap, let's reflect, on some of the data that in women in STEM, what are the 3 issues that the course focuses on? Women's access and participation in science, representation, re-entry and retention of women scientists and technologists, leaders in science and technology field as enablers and administrators of doing science. When we will not have women leaders in science, then how will we actually make the structure of scientific institutions, facilitating girls and women or women scientists and technologists to participate in science, right? And international context, what are the debates? Is the gender gap remains wide in academic careers across countries and due to attrition of women and girls at higher level. In 2030, Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 2015, calls for an inclusive and, transformative society and focused majorly on gender equality. So how do we achieve gender equality? Like achieving that this 2030 agenda shall ensure girls and women's access to science, education and career. So even the UNESCO report, it is a very interesting report. Learners, you can read it, like it is available online also. Cracking the Code, Girls and Women's Education in Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics, emphasizes that while currently more women are entering into this STEM workforce, like if you really look at information ICT, so you could see that women are there, like majority of women are there in IT sector. So they are significantly underrepresented in certain sectors also, even certain disciplines also. So the declaration and framework for action for implementation of SDG emphasized on providing attention towards girls and women to study STEM. Like, how do we educate girls and women to pursue science career? The report Cracking the Code, Girls and Women's Education, this report reflects that globally only 35% of women represent all the students enrolled for higher education in STEM, and their representation differs across STEM disciplines. So you could see that there is lower representation of women are observed in disciplines such as manufacturing, engineering, construction, natural science, including mathematics, statistics, physics, earth science, so on and so forth. Though in Indian context, and here we can, after having the discussion, we can conclude the session that in Indian context, the World Bank data indicates that there are more Indian female graduates in STEM disciplines compared to developed nations, and the data is there in the PPT, and where you could see India has 43%, but in US it is 34, UK 38, Germany 27, France 32%. It is the data, in the year 2021. AISH report data for the year 2017, 18, 19, 20 indicate that the representation of female graduates in STEM has increased during these 3 years in India. On the contrary, the representation of male graduates in STEM field has decreased from 12.9 lakh in 2017-18 to 11.9 lakh in the year 2019 and 20. So in India, the overall last decades shows that the overall enrollment for girls has increased, but there is a declining gender gap percentage from 16 to, with a declining gender gap percentage. But there is an interesting study conducted by Sahu and Clayson in the year 2021. They focused on the stream choice at higher secondary level by analyzing a cross-sectional survey data from NSS. So the aggregated data reveals that girls have higher proportion in humanities compared to boys who opted to study science disciplines. So there is also a stream choice you could see at the secondary level. You could see that there is a kind of a gender gap that exists, or there is a kind of a gender segregation that exists across disciplines. The AISH report 2019-20 shows stream-wise enrollment at undergrad level, which reflects a kind of positive gender distribution in India. So even though the there is higher enrollment, but at the same time, when we are coming to the stream choice, we could see that there is a kind of a gender difference that exists across different disciplines or streams. With this, I would like to conclude this session, and in the next session, we are going to discuss about other two courses, that is BGS 003 and BGS 004. Thank you.
A warm welcome to IGNOU. If you are creative, if you can write well, and if you can visualize, mass communication is the correct career option for you. I am going to talk about postgraduate diploma in journalism and mass communication, which is also the first year of MA program in journalism and mass communication. So any learner who has done a postgraduate diploma in journalism and mass communication is eligible to take admission straight away into the second year of our master's program in journalism and mass communication. Duration to complete this program is minimum 1 year, and because we have this inherent flexibility in distance education system, you can take up to 3 years to complete this program. The minimum eligibility criteria for taking admission in this program is bachelor's in any discipline. To give you a glimpse of what are the various components of this program, we begin with telling you what mass communication is, what are the various areas, various branches of mass communication. Then we go on to tell you about the various reporting techniques and beats of reporting, followed by media ethics, the principles, the codes of conduct that you must follow, and we also focus on the writing skills and editing skills for print media. Now this program comprises of 8 courses of 4 credits each. 25% of the entire program is practical based. So we have 6 theory courses and 2 practical courses. This program is so designed so that it will be able to make you more employable in the market. So it helps you build a career in print media, in radio, television, new media, as well as the allied subjects of mass communication, which could be media marketing, advertising, public relations and corporate communications, event management. This can also help you become an entrepreneur in areas like photography or having your own production house and so on. So I hope that you will be excited to join this program, and we will be waiting to welcome you here in IGNOU.
Welcome back, learners. I'm Dr. Sunita Dhal, faculty of School of Gender and Development Studies, IGNOU. And we were discussing about the certificate program in Gender and Science in our last session. And in this session, we are going to take it forward, our discussion with regards to women's question in science. So what in the last session we focused on two broader patterns or trends which have been observed in India with regards to gender discourse in science. That is, there is a decline of female enrollment from primary to secondary and tertiary education. And what are the factors, that is socio-cultural factors, which are going to discuss further in this particular session, which our two courses are going to focus on. And second trend was that women's access to higher education at the undergraduation and graduation level has increased since the year 1947. So you could see that there is a positive trend. At the same time, there is a gender gap or gender difference that exists across disciplines. With this, let's move on with our discussion with other two courses which are part of the certificate program. The second course is BGS 003, that is Socio-Political Dimensions of Gender and Science. Again, this course has 4 segments or 4 blocks, and each block more or less having 3 units altogether. So this particular course, we have, you could see that in the PPT, that it is talking about women in science education, Indian policies and program, then women in Indian industrial sectors. So when we look at the first course is more conceptual in nature, little analytical, and that is also important for all the learners, because unless and until we understand the concept of gender, then how are we going to demystify the question of science? So therefore, it is very important that how we see a particular data from a gender perspective or gender concept, and therefore we design the first course in more theoretical, conceptual and analytical way. And now it is more with regard to policies, with regard to data in terms of international data as well as data from India. So yes, you could have understood that how gender is seen as an occupational barrier, like in different occupation, and certainly it is seen as an occupational barrier primarily when we are pursuing our science career. And with, what are these policies? Do we have any policies in India? Yes. The Department of Science and Technology and other departments as well have different policies designed, to encourage women's participation, girls and women's participation in science. So some of the key policies here we can reflect, it is there in the PPT. The National Policy for Empowerment of Women in 2001. Then there is, from 6th 5-year plan, Science Technology for Women, S&T policy for women was designed, and 10th 5-year plan in the year 2002 and 7. Women Scientist Scheme was designed. Then Science and Technology Policy 2003 it came. Biotechnology Career Advancement and Reorientation Program came into existence in 2010, Science, Technology and Innovation Policy 2013, and 12th 5-year plan is Kiran, that is Knowledge Involvement in Research Advancement through Nurturing. And the recent program is Gati. So how to look at the whole question of, we are talking about gender equality, how to bring about gender equality in science or scientific institutions. But Gati aims at bringing about gender equity. How to change the microclimate of every scientific institution or every science disciplines so that more and more women feel encouraged to participate in doing science. So, if, we really have to break the or demystify science as a discipline, as an institution, as a practice. So one of the important factors we have to understand is the gender stereotype. What we have in the last session, we covered about gender roles. But here we can also look into the whole question of myths and stereotypes in science. So there is a study, a meta-analysis of trends in international mathematics and science study, 2015, which is an international assessment of mathematics and science at the 4th and the 8th grade, shows that boys had higher achievements in 18 countries, because ये international assessment है. तो ये study दर्शाता है कि हमें 18 countries में boys ने अच्छा किया with average difference of 9 points as compared to girls who had higher achievement in 8 countries. But जिस countries में girls ने अच्छा किया in terms of in this mathematical assessment में, वहाँ पे average difference 18 points था. So you could see that. So that is not a stereotype, when I was in the school, so there was a kind of a stereotype that, girls will do certain disciplines like humanities, social sciences, home sciences, right? So mathematics is something that a boy can do, or boys are encouraged to do mathematics. So it is not only there within the family or, in the community, but at also this reflection we could see subtly it was there in schools as well. When I remember when I was studying, at primary or at secondary level. So here this question comes is that 23 countries showed no difference between boys and girls in average mathematics achievements. So then continue with another example where it shows that the Singaporean school system is challenging stereotypical views where girls are achieving high results in mathematics as boys. So it is not that girls can't do science, but how do we break those gender stereotypes which exist in different society or in different culture? How to make that socio-cultural factors conducive for girls to perform in science disciplines, where I feel, and also the literature, many research studies have focused that teacher plays a very important role. Like teachers are the role models in influencing or dispelling gender stereotypes in STEM education at a very early school days. Therefore, teacher is a very important role here to play in terms of dispelling or demystifying gender stereotype at the school level. Going beyond traditional STEM instructions and use hands-on activities or real-world examples in the classrooms would ensure gender parity in science and mathematics at the school level. And in block 4 and 5, we are talking about some of the debates, that is international initiatives, and how we are talking about science is gendered. Then how science is gendered, like, through international data also we are going to focus, so that how we are going to regender the whole process of scientific knowledge construction, and something that is gender science culture, where also the question of how different disciplines are, are overly represented by women. That is a gender clustering in certain disciplines. There is a glass ceiling that many of women are there at in the IT sector, but at the same time, how many of women are there or break the glass ceiling and have there in the decision making role or in the leadership role? These questions, or there is a gender segregation of disciplines. There is vertical segregation also, horizontal segregation also. So here these questions or these concepts have been dealt deeply in these blocks. So what are the key points? That women still represent just 29% of researchers globally. So here also it is very important for us to look at the research data. So how globally, what is the percentage of women, as researchers across science disciplines? Question of mentorship, network, role models also needs to be interrogated. Women and the women's representation in different industries. So when we are talking about industries like health industries, manufacturing industries, right? So, in small scale industry. So when we are talking about small scale industry, you could see that larger women are there in small scale industries, as workers, right? So here, the gender disaggregated data, collection of gender disaggregated data is very important, because it also reflects that which are those industries, like how many, what is the percentage of women in the manufacturing sector, what is the percentage of women working or represented in the health industries, in health and wellness centers, or in hospitals, and what are their labels, what kind or what is the nature of job that they are highly represented, like women as surgeon, as doctors, as general physicians, vis-a-vis women as support staff. So these questions are also very important. So, and the intersectionality debates within science, whole question of caste, race, sexuality, class, ethnicity, in the question of doing science and practicing science. So it is an interesting data I thought we can discuss briefly, is about women and Nobel Prize. Until 2019, 616 awards in natural sciences, where 3% were women. 932 individuals till 2022, where 6.1% is women who have got, and total 222 total individuals in physiology or medicine category, and out of which 12. So if you really look at all the awards, you could see the percentage of women getting the Nobel Prize is less. And what are the challenges? Why this gender difference in research, in getting the Nobel Prizes or into leadership position, or women percentage in corporate boards, because many women are working in the corporate sector. So how many of women have been able to be in the corporate boards? So these questions, even in India, we could look at the data of Santi Soru Bhatnagar Award, the prestigious award in science discipline. So what are the challenges? It reflects certain and subtle challenges that exist in across countries, both global and at the national level. The double, triple burden on women. So as I said, how that is a division of labor that exists, and what is the double burden that women who are are scientists, technologists, they also are taking care of the household primarily. So you could see that in some of the movies, how women's role have been represented, like even scientist role have been represented across different, within the family setup as well. Major loss in numbers between postdoctoral stage to faculty stage. So they could do for postdoctoral stage, but at the same time, gradually the number decreases, right? When women how many of women are represented as faculty positions in science disciplines in premier institutions. Discrimination at the time of selection, harassment at the workplace, and exclusion also at workplace. So this is a study by Vinita Bal in the year 2021. So exclusion also, say, when we see that women are emerging as leaders in science field, science and technology field, or as administrator. So there is a kind of exclusion that also women face as scientists, technologists, administrator or leaders, whether they are in corporate sector or in public institutions. Socio-cultural barriers also there, like how I give the example of gender stereotypes in mathematics, and gender inequity at the workplace. So where the Gati program actually was situated, like inequity. There are policies have been implemented well in India to bring about gender equality, but it is now time that we must also bring about gender inclusivity by ensuring gender equity in across scientific institutions or within institution, but across scientific disciplines or departments, I would say. And next question is, we talk about that the last we are talking about here, the question of here we are talking about the last section on last course, that is BGS 4, that is gender perspectives on health. So here in this question, what are here also we can look at some of the question, that is role of mentoring in science. Why we need to talk about role of mentoring? That at the beginning of doing science, it is very important for us to look at the role of mentor. Who would be your mentor? So maybe a supervisor would be your mentor. Your senior will be your mentor. So here, research training should be available in all disciplines. Career is something that is not sidetracked when scientists have interrupted careers to fulfill family responsibilities. Outreach efforts exist for women, for young girls and women who have interest in pursuing science. Professional societies also need to support career advancement of women scientists, and network of support should also exist for women scientists. So this is very important for us, that networking, we can't ignore the role of mentors here in scientific disciplines or in, for women scientists, technologists and leaders in science. And also, how do we create network? How do they create research networks so that the more and more women feel encouraged to participate in pursuing science career and to go higher in terms of decision-making bodies. As I said, this would be our concluding discussion on the last course, that is BGS 004, Gendered Perspectives on Health. This course is completely dedicated on health. While designing this particular program, also, there was a quiet debate that do we need to discuss about gender and health as a separate course? But it is very important because there is more women in medicine if you really see other disciplines in science, but at the same time there are discriminatory practices in modern science, nutrition, healthcare, and in terms of health, illness, and particularly reproductive health and maternal health. So what are the key points here we can look into? That is gender bias in various components of medical research, such as clinical trials, contraceptive research, and vaccines. So very, very good example I could give is a vaccine. So how you could see that, COVID vaccine. So after in countries, after administering the COVID vaccines. So many articles also, many research studies globally have come up with how there is a kind of a difference in terms of gender difference, in terms of repercussion of COVID vaccines on women's body. So the difference is on the basis of gender, but also there is also an access issue, like when how women did not, or the women were in some parts, in some communities, they there is an access issue. They were not, they feel hesitant to go and take vaccine, or they were not even allowed to go and take vaccine. So one is that the implication of vaccine on women's body, which it is different vis-a-vis the whole question of access here, in terms of accessing medical facilities or accessing vaccine, accessing healthcare system is also another challenge at certain societies, culture and countries. Healthcare and non-normative genders, how do we look at the transgender community here? Do we really have the healthcare, the primary healthcare system, community healthcare system to address the issues, the health challenges of the transgendered communities? So these questions have also been discussed. How girls are eliminated at the conception phase. So here you could see that, even in India also, there is a culture of son preference in certain parts of India, in certain states of India. So how girls are being eliminated, even like we have the PCPNDT Act in place, it has been implemented, but at the same time there is practice of female feticide in different parts of the country. In Indian communities, there is a lot of societal pressure to have a male child. And the last two blocks are focusing on perspectives on mental health and gender and disability. What are the key points here? Is that intersection between gender, mental health and care. So here we are talking about the whole question of, is there a kind of a women's exclusion when we are talking about mental health issues, right? And even, the question of marginalization and exclusion of gender in mental health issues. So there are different case studies which focus that how do we look at mental health issues or mental health context in terms of from a gender perspective, both women as caregivers or both women who experience mental health challenges. And disability, masculinity and reproduction is something that is it's very complex subject that also been dealt deeply in this particular question. So now we come to the last slide of this session, that is on evaluation. It's very important because, learners, you may be wondering that how do we, because how do we take up evaluation? And as you can access the IGNOU website, you could see the assignments are there. Assignments are been, one assignment all learners are going to attempt per course, and there is a term and examination. So assignments are part of our continuous assessment. And what does this continuous assessment mean? That you submit assignment and you can get the feedback to improve upon the assignment. And it helps that feedback of your teacher, feedback of your academic counselors, help in terms of improving the knowledge base and also the writing base of the learners, so that they can do well in the term and examination. So now the assignments will be uploaded. The new assignments will be uploaded by the 3rd week of July. And those who have not attempted assignments, please wait for July 3rd week so that you can attempt the new assignments. And plagiarized assignments are not evaluated. Please do not plagiarize it. It is an ethical violence in the context of education and knowledge. Handwritten scanned assignment to be submitted through your nodal RCs. Or examinations are held for all the courses twice in a year. And program completion, minimum 6 months. It is always encouraged that it's a certificate program. You can complete 3 courses in 6 months, and maximum duration is for 2 years. And I am Dr. Sunita Dhal, and I have with me Professor Savita Singh, and we are the program coordinators. Our emails are there in this PPT, and any problems or any questions, academic questions you face in terms of, how to submit the assignment, or you have not understood some of the assignment questions, or how do we get the feedback from our teacher from us. So all these questions you can freely email to us, and we can write back to you. And timely we hold our Gyan Darshan sessions, and certain topics from different courses have always been taken up in Gyan Darshan sessions. So always log in to whenever there is an information, it will be posted in the website, so that you can always access some of the videos and the content from the website. With this, I thank you once again for listening to the session, and have a good day. Thank you.